Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. This weekend is Memorial Day, and outside of the typical question I always ask myself, why we have so many memorials glorifying war and so few to absolutely anything else. Aside from that, I got to thinking about this idea of remembering, which today's news cycles, even if you do get some real reporting on an issue, which is rare, it's hard to hang on to it for more than a day or two. But just because cameras vanish doesn't mean that the issues do. Quite the opposite. They continue to grow, become more complex. More corruption gets shoved around behind closed doors, under rugs, and under the radar. So in this spirit of remembering, and the connection of past to present, let's dig into our first story. Flint. You may have picked up that today's spoken word was inspired by Flint, Michigan's water crisis, and indeed, the system that allowed not only Flint to happen, but many other places. In reality, it's pretty fucking surprising that we don't have more Flints popping up in this unabashed corporatocracy that puts profit before people at every turn. Particularly when you consider the absolute power that an emergency manager, like Darnell Early in Flint's case, has over decisions like where 100,000 people get their water from. Reminder, Early, appointed by Governor Rick Snyder with no public input, is the one who greenlighted the switch to the corrosive Flint River. And while Early is the villain in Flint's story, Snyder alone has appointed emergency managers to 7 cities and school districts during his term as governor of Michigan. And, surprise, surprise, these emergency managers are appointed in cities and school districts that are low income and primarily black. Why? Well, for that absolute power, answerable to no one but the governor who appoints them. Pretty sweet deal for Snyder. According to a law passed in 2011 by Governor Rick Snyder, which broadened the scope of influence for emergency managers, these anti-democratic, sociopathic little shitsticks have the power to, quote, cancel or renegotiate city contracts, liquidate assets, suspend local government, unilaterally draft policy, and even disincorporate. Trivia point here, emergency managers in Michigan have employed all of these tools of ultimate power except disincorporation. Maybe they just didn't have time to get around to it, because, what fun is power if you can't use and abuse it, right? So this is how you get Flint, where water is not only filled with lead, but also with hazardous chemicals like, wait for it, chloroform. So not only should you not drink or bathe or wash with this water, you probably shouldn't breathe around it either. No big deal. And in spite all of this, Flint residents still pay the highest water rates in the country, almost 2 times the national average, in fact. Meanwhile, data from 2009 to 2013 shows that almost half of Flint's residents lived below the poverty line, with a quarter, that's 25% of residents, making below $15,000 a year. And let's just say, for devil's advocate, that we consider the median household income in Flint as reported by the census, namely $24,679. That's still less than half of the national average income between 2009 and 2013, which was about $53,000. Add to the fact that Career Trends estimates the average cost of living for a single person with no kids to be more than $28,000 a year, not considering the most expensive water in the country. Yeah, that paints a pretty fucking shitty picture for the residents of Flint. And I know. I'm sorry I'm throwing a lot of graphs and numbers your way, particularly for someone like me who really does not like math. But these numbers not only give you a small factual tidbit of how our system is rigged against the most vulnerable, but it also shows in plain black and white math how it's quite literally impossible to get by in a city like Flint, now wrestling with the added costs of healthcare due to any one or a combination of the following. In children, brain development, seizures, coma, and even death. Anemia, hypertension, renal impairment, immunotoxicity, and toxicity to the reproductive organs. The neurological and behavioral effects of lead are believed to be irreversible. Furthermore, lead is a cumulative toxicant, meaning that it builds up in your body and then stored in places like your brain, your liver, your teeth, kidneys, and bones, meaning that even if Flint's water were to be cleaned up today, the long-term catastrophic effects of the lead poisoning would still be felt for decades to come. And lead is more toxic for children than adults, but it's certainly no fucking picnic for adults either. The CDC reports that adults who experience lead exposure can suffer from anything from abdominal pain to prolonged depression, memory loss, high blood pressure, heart disease, kidney disease, and reduced fertility. Not to mention, on that same note, that any pregnant mothers will of course pass on the lead to their unborn children, resulting in anything from the aforementioned ailments to mental retardation and physical handicaps at birth. And remember, these are just the effects of lead on the body. The effects of the other chemicals found in Flint's water obviously don't do anything to mitigate these negative effects. So take all this data in, hold it in there, and now multiply it, because Flint is not alone. Lead pipes crisscross this land of the free, home of the brave, and indeed, here in D.C., in 2001, lead leached into the water supply due to old lead pipes, and a partial pipe replacement plan only exacerbated the problem. But hey, at least city officials here knew where the fuck to find them. In cities across the U.S., records are severely lacking as to where the lead pipes even are. So understand, I'm not telling you this to scare you, but so that you know the facts, so that you know that Flint is not the anomaly that the corporate media or government officials would have you believe. Flint is but one example of a nationwide failing, or indeed missing, infrastructure. And as infrastructure bills stall in our oh-so-effective Congress, the excuse is always, well, where are we going to get the money for all these projects? I'll ask you to keep that in mind, as well as the $1.5 trillion that we spent on this piece of shit that doesn't even fly properly. And keep that in mind as I relay this information. In April of this year, the Fitch Ratings Agency estimated the cost of replacement of lead pipelines to be between $1,000 and $5,000 per line, a figure that could add up to $50 billion nationally for replacing the estimated 6 to 11 million U.S. lead lines. Based on that estimate, replacing Michigan lines could cost between $500 million and $2.3 billion. So that's a lot, right? Not more than $1.5 trillion for a hunk of essentially scrap metal, but still, it's a lot. But riddle me this. Strap in, because here comes some more numbers. The White House press office released a report in early May of this year outlining the funds that are going to Flint to assist in the current crisis. Here are some of them. $80 million in January promised by Obama to increase access to potable water and help unfuck the current system. $250,000 for more medical staff and services, a one-time Department of Health and Human Services emergency funding of $3.6 million. $15 million from the U.S. Department of Labor for humanitarian and recovery efforts, and $400,000 from the Small Business Association to try and boost the economy in this area. And these numbers do not include the cost of promised furthered water testing, sampling, and on-the-ground aid supposedly from agencies such as FEMA, EPA, USDA, and HUD. Although on that last point, residents and visitors alike report that community volunteers are the ones distributing water, checking the filters, public health, and safety, not federal agencies. But that little hiccup aside, if we were to add all those numbers up, we would undoubtedly be left with a considerable sum. And if you think about it, a totally unnecessary sum, had we prevented the Flint water crisis from happening, which we could have. The one-time fee of replacing lead pipes is far and away smaller than seeing crises like Flint pop up all over the U.S. in the coming years, not to mention the aforementioned long-term healthcare costs. What will those add up to? Or how about countless years of pain and suffering? What is that worth? Is it worth less than bombing children in Yemen? Is it worth less than aid to tyrannical states like Saudi Arabia and Israel? Is it worth less than oil and gas subsidies, pharmaceutical kickbacks, and Wall Street loopholes? Which is why I'm bringing this up now. Because as I said earlier, these issues don't vanish just because the cameras do. We can't all focus on Flint 24/7, obviously, but we can remind ourselves of the realities of life in this exceptional country. Furthermore, we can and must act. This Memorial Day weekend, a coalition of organizations are putting together a multi-state water convoy to deliver fresh water to Flint. In conjunction with that, there will also be a town hall meeting/press conference to apply the pressure needed to get this community the answers, actions, and justice that they deserve. The water distribution will take place on Saturday and the town hall on Sunday. All related officials to this deadly fiasco will be invited and urged to attend. The case will be presented to them as the public sees it and as documents have proven. Citizens directly affected will have a chance to speak the truth to the media as to what is really taking place in their city. We will then move forward with direct requests to specific actions that need to take place to find remedy for those suffering people. Following the press conference, the community will be invited to attend a march of solidarity. So to find out more and where to drop off water in your area, or indeed to set up your own water drop-off point, visit the Facebook event page at bit.ly/FlintDrop.